Okay, so what if I told you that reality isn't actually made of stuff at all? What if everything you see, everything you are, from the distant stars right down to your own thoughts, isn't some kind of substance, but is actually pure, self-generating structure? Let's get into it, because we're about to explore a pretty radical idea that connects ancient metaphysics with some seriously cutting-edge math.
Everything kicks off with this one, single, really mysterious Hebrew word, davar. Now in English, we need at least 4 different words just to get close to its meaning. It's a word, like a spoken command. It's a thing, like a physical object. It's an event, like something that happens. And it's a matter, like a topic or a concern. And this isn't just a word with a few different definitions. It's one single concept that echoes across all these different layers of meaning.
So that brings us to the big question for this whole explainer. How is that even possible? And, maybe more importantly, what if this ancient linguistic oddity isn't an oddity at all? What if it's actually a deep insight into the very fabric of existence? What if the universe isn't made of stuff, but of davar?
All right, to unpack all of this, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the mystery of davar. Then we'll see how the book of Genesis could be seen as the mathematics of creation itself. From there, we'll take a trip to Sinai to figure out how structure can survive in a total void. After that, we'll get into the idea of incarnation, where the universe actually gets to know itself, which leads us, finally, to something called the Great Recognition.
Okay, first up, Genesis. Now, we're going to look at the biblical creation story not as a religious text or a myth, but as a surprisingly accurate map for how complexity emerges mathematically. I know that probably sounds a little out there, but just stick with me on this.
So first, we have to make a pretty big mental shift. For, centuries, Western philosophy has been all about a substance-based reality, this idea that everything has to be made of something. The problem is, that just leads to a question that never ends. Well, what's that stuff made of? The idea of davar gives us a totally different path. It says reality isn't made of stuff, reality is the generative structure itself. The rules of the game are the game. Now, this isn't just some abstract philosophy. A field of mathematics has popped up that gives this idea a real, formal language. Information cohomology. I know, it sounds super complex, but think of it this way. If reality is a building, information cohomology isn't the bricks or the mortar. It's the actual blueprint. It's the set of rules that defines how all the parts relate to each other. And this is where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. The story in Genesis maps almost one-to-one with the mathematical emergence of structure. So, day 0, formless and void. That's like a state of maximum randomness, what a mathematician would call maximum entropy. Day 1, light is created. That's the very first distinction, the first bit of information in the whole system. Day 2, separating the waters. That's like creating a rule that defines different domains. And with each day that follows, the structure just gets more and more complex, until you have life and then humanity, a structure that can actually reflect on itself. The parallel is just staggering.
And, this kind of crazy parallel has happened before. The famous physicist Freeman Dyson said this when he found out that a formula from pure number theory describing prime numbers was identical to a formula he'd made for energy levels in atomic nuclei. You've got 2 completely separate fields, quantum physics and number theory, and they somehow discovered the exact same underlying structure. He literally called it a miracle.
But we're not talking about miracles in a supernatural way. They're signs that 2 different systems share the same deep structural identity. A genuine mathematical discovery happens when you find the exact same structure in different places. It comes from their fundamental rules, and it lets you make new predictions that actually turn out to be true. It's a sign that you've tapped into the universal grammar of the davar.
Okay, so we've seen how structure gets created. Now let's head to Sinai to see how it survives. We're going to explore what happens to structure at the absolute limits. I mean, in the most extreme places in the entire universe, where the whole idea of stuff just completely breaks down. I want you to picture the very center of a black hole, a singularity, a place where our laws of physics just give up, and our concept of matter becomes totally meaningless. The standard view is that everything that falls in, stars, planets, anything, is just crushed into this infinitely dense point. All the information about what it used to be is just gone, erased forever. But in a reality made of davar, that's not what happens. The substance might be gone, for sure, but the structure, the information itself, it actually persists. We actually know that 3 specific properties make it past a black hole's event horizon: its total mass, its electric charge, and its angular momentum, or spin. Now, these aren't stuff. You can't hold them. They are pure information, the permanent blueprint of whatever fell in. They're what mathematicians call invariants, the core structural essence that's preserved even when the physical form is totally obliterated.
And this is a perfect illustration of a powerful metaphor from the source material. The Davar is like an ark floating in a cosmic abyss. Even when all the material stuff is washed away in the flood of a singularity, that core structural information is carried through, safe and sound. The fundamental rules of reality, the covenant it holds. So that brings us to the climax of this whole story, incarnation. If a structure can emerge out of nothing and can survive total destruction, what is its ultimate expression? Well, the answer proposed here is consciousness itself.
The theory goes like this. Consciousness is what happens when a structure gets complex enough to actually observe itself. It's the blueprint reading itself. In the language of math, this is called self-reflective cohomology. The universe, this great unfolding Davar, finally develops a part, that's us, that can turn around and recognize the very structure that created it. The Word becomes flesh.
And what's so amazing about this idea is that it doesn't try to throw out other theories of consciousness. It actually unifies them. All these major modern theories, like integrated information theory or the free energy principle, they can all be described and understood using the mathematical language of information cohomology. It's like they're all just different dialects for describing the same fundamental thing.
And this totally reframes the famous hard problem of consciousness. The question of why we have a subjective experience. Why does it feel like something to be you? Well, in this model, that feeling isn't some extra magical ingredient. Subjectivity is simply the built-in internal perspective of a self-referencing information structure. It's what the Davar, knowing itself, feels like from the inside.
So where does all this leave us? We've gone from a single ancient word through the mathematics of creation, deep into the heart of a black hole, and right into our own minds. And it all leads to this one final, really profound idea, the Great Recognition.
You might have heard people talk about the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics, the puzzle of why abstract math is just so ridiculously good at describing the physical world. Well, this whole framework gives us a pretty simple answer. It's not unreasonable at all. Mathematics works because it's the native language of reality. It's the tool we came up with to understand and map the very Davar that we're all a part of.
And honestly, this isn't some brand new idea out of nowhere. It's really the mathematical rediscovery of an ancient, timeless philosophy. Whether you call it the Hebrew Davar or the Greek Logos or the Buddhist concept of emptiness and form, cultures throughout all of history have had this intuition that reality emerges from some formless potential into a single, complex, unified structure.
And in the end, the point of all this isn't to become a master of complex math. The goal is to reach a state of recognition, to really see that we are not separate observers just looking at the universe. We are expressions of the universe's own structure. We are active participants in this incredible ongoing story of the Davar speaking itself into existence. And so that leaves us with one last pretty awe-inspiring question. If reality really is a structure that's becoming aware of itself and you are part of that awareness, what new structure will you help it see? What part do you play in its story?